It's like a
thunder.
boom. You're not rolling.
Oh no, that's a rocket coming out of the launcher. That's the rocket engine. Yeah.
Okay, so they're doing rockets.
Rockets, yeah.
Okay, I was like,
Because the only cannons on Fort Sill now are in TRADOC. There aren't any more force guns. Cannon units.
2-2, that's right.
2.2 and 178.
Well,
I'll check.
Whatever they're called now.
there was a Beit, but nobody else wants to go.
Just does it all.
Great, yeah, you're right. You got training.
Yeah. All right. Welcome back, everybody. Hope there's some folks at home. Shabbat Shalom, Lucia. We've eaten and we are satisfied, so let's thank Adonai for the land. Abba Father, we have eaten and we are satisfied. We thank you for the land in Yeshua's name. Amen. You guys got your gardens started yet?
Wheat garden.
Wheat garden?
Weed.
Your weed garden. Right on, brother.
We got food around. Not that kind of weed.
Talking about your sticker patch?
Yes.
All right, I got you.
We got food around.
I got my plot dug up for potatoes and onions, but my onion sets that I ordered have not come in, and instead of buying seed potatoes at Sutherland's this year, I ordered some and they also haven't come in. So I'm a little bit behind the curve. I should have had them in the ground this past week, but they're not here yet. So, but the ground is ready for them. So we did Torah portion Vayaqhel. Today's Midrash is only from the Torah portion. It's not going to go in too much depth, but we got about 30 minutes of things that I noticed I wanted to talk about. And of course, anything that you might have noticed that you would like to talk about. Moshe assembled, so Vayaqhel, you see the word on the top right, Vav, Yod, Kof, He, Lamed. Then you can see what is the verb down below that Vayaqhel is made from. What is that word? Anybody know what it is? No?
Vayaqhel? No, it definitely has some Lamed there.
Kahal. What is kahal?
A kahal.
Yeah, assembly, right? The kahal. When you assemble the assembly. So it should be Vayaqhel et kahal. That's pretty cool. So, and there is a place, and I should have looked it up, but there is a spot in the Torah that says Vayaqhel et kahal. And we've gone through the Aleph Tav in the past, but it is from kahal. So when anybody want to take a stab at when this assembly took place, this special assembly, when Moses brought these people together? Shabbat. Yeah, when was it? Special date.
When was it?
Yeah.
Shavuot. Rosh Hashanah?
Who?
Oh. Yom Teruah?
So we don't know, but the prevailing opinion is, and Rashi concluded that it was the day after Yom Kippur, because they had just been forgiven for the sin of the golden calf. And so after the forgiveness, he came together to ask for, hey, give your gifts for the Mishkan after the sin of the golden calf. The scriptures don't say when it was, but the prevailing opinion even to today is that it was the day after Yom Kippur.
The same year that they left from Mitzrayim.
Yes, sir. Yep. Day after Yom Kippur. Work. Can anyone read what that word says? What are the letters there? Mem?
Is it Malach or something?
Ooh, man, right on. Very close.
Well, it's a Mem, Lamed, Aleph,
Uh-huh. And A, so that spells, what'd you say? Melakah. Work is melakah. What does melakah mean? Well, work, right? But let's take a look. Bereshit 2, verses 1 through 3 says, The heavens and the earth were completed in all their array, and in the seventh day Elohim completed his melachah, which he had done, and he rested on the seventh day from all of his melachah, which he had made. So it's mostly best translated as craftsmanship. And what that means is anything that would be done for the building of the Mishkan or the tabernacle, right?
And is that at all related to Malach?
No,
That's king.
Mm-hmm.
yeah, no, it's not. Melachah,
One of those letters is different.
yeah.
When we talk about the other-
But in 31:14-15, it is translated as work. And so whatever work could be involved in creating, this might mean speaking your own word. Let's take a look at Yeshayahu 58:13. Let me see if I can find it. Yeshayahu 58:13. We're going to talk a little bit more about this in depth. 58, not 68. 58:13 says, "You turn back your foot from the Sabbath, from doing your pleasure on my set-apart day, and call the Sabbath a delight, the set-apart day of Adonai, esteemed, and shall esteem it, not doing your own ways, nor finding your own pleasure, nor speaking your own words." Doing your own thing. So basically what it means is not doing your own work, those things. And so it could mean speaking your own words. We'll talk just a little bit more, but it's thought to be a reference to creative work. And so the things that you might have to do, the skilled embroiderer or the metalsmith, the liturgist, all those guys that are just skilled craftsmen. And anybody who knows me knows by now that excellence in craftsmanship just warms my heart, and you just don't find it anymore. If you can think back 25 years ago, and I'm going to say 25 years ago because that was about the last time I can remember seeing it. It didn't matter. You could have a plumber come out to your house because you had an issue with old lead pipes and they're messing up, and you get a plumber out there from 25 years ago. That guy was a master craftsman and took pride in what he was doing. Of course, he had his basic plumber rules: blue means cold, red means hot, water flows downhill, fingernails at the end of the day, that kind of thing, right? Basic plumber rules. But those guys were craftsmen, skilled, and exactly. You can't there because of this. You can't use that kind of joint there because of this. They knew, they took pride in what they were doing. That was a craftsman. Same thing with carpenters, guys that would come out and build a custom home or something. Now that doesn't mean that, in the 70s, those guys had to toke up just a little bit, I'm guessing, before they got started building houses. Because there's some houses here in Lawton built in the 70s that I'm going, man, what were they thinking? And sometimes even before that.
Nowadays, houses aren't designed to last more than 5 years.
Well, I don't know about that, but yeah, they're not the same quality for sure. But those guys were craftsmen, and man, I love that so much. And every once in a while, I'll talk about a place down in Elm Mott, Texas, close to Waco. And there's a community down there called Homestead Heritage, and their homestead farm is a place called Brazos de Dios, or Arm of God, or Hand of God. And they have dedicated their lives to excellence in craftsmanship, honesty in business, and pretty much making their lives an open picture show that you can go down there. And so this place, and just to give you a quick example, if you wanted to go to Homestead Heritage, they have a school down there, and you can take beginning, intermediate, and master carpentry. And so you go down and for your basic class, and you learn a little bit about the hand tools, some saws, some chisels, how to take care of them. You learn a little bit about the wood, and you make a little project. And it's probably something akin to a birdhouse or a cutting board or something like that, because it's the basic class, right? And how to sand it and how to take care of it. And by the way, they don't use any power tools whatsoever, none. And so then you come down for the intermediate class, and you learn a little bit more about some more tools, some block planes, some bigger planes, some other chisels, some ads, a carpenter's slick, whatever, the measuring tools, and a little bit more about the wood. And then you make a box. And they don't use any glue, and they don't use any nails. It's all joinery. And you make this box. And I'm telling you, when you're done with it, you're surprised, because it is an heirloom piece of craftsmanship that you just made. It's really amazing. And then you go down for the master class, and they teach you just a little bit more of the tools, draw knives, whatever the case is. And for your final project, they give you 2 5-foot tall logs, oak logs, that are about this diameter, and you make a rocking chair. And there's no glue, there's no screws, there's no nails, it's all joinery. And this rocking chair that you make is it's heirloom quality. It's amazing what these people have done. Quality and craftsmanship. And so that's what I like to akin these guys that were working on the Mishkan, or I like to say the tabernacle. My kids used to get a kick out of that when they were little. But skilled workers. These people really take pride in everything they do. And it's not just carpentry. There's blacksmithing. On one occasion when my son was very little, I'm going to say he was probably maybe 3rd or 4th grade, maybe a little younger, maybe 2nd grade. We went down there for the weekend for the first time, and we walked into the blacksmith shop, and there was a forge, and it was hot, but there was nobody in there. And one of the guys came in, and I said, "Are you about to make something?" He goes, "I can do a demonstration really quick." So he started talking just a little bit. He picks up an old piece of rod steel, and it was just junk. And he starts heating it up, and he starts talking about how they used to use coal, but that got too expensive, and then they started working with charcoal, and they can make their own charcoal. So, and that's what they use in their forges now. And the bellows were all hand bellows to get it to push the air into the fire. And he gets this thing red, and he starts banging on it, and he starts telling us a story about how they're making a decorative railing for the restaurant. I'll tell you about the restaurant in a second. Making a decorative railing for the restaurant. And he's talking about it a little bit, and when he was done, he put this piece of steel, he quenched it, and it was an elm tree leaf that he had forged with a hammer, and you could see the veins of the leaf in the steel. It was amazing, just amazing so anyway, master craftsmanship is just something we don't see anymore. And that's one of the things that at our Sukkot this year, that I'm trying to get off the ground, is our craft fair, to try to get back to something like that, where people really take pride in something that they're doing. And it's not one of those things where you have to be, you have to be excellent at it the first time you start. But if you were to pick something and start working on it and start learning a craft, it doesn't matter how old you are. You can be as old as Jim. Jim is 97 years old. Look how good he looks.
96.
Sorry, sir. He's 96. I apologize.
If you're trying to get him to finally pick up a craft.
Yeah, what I'm saying is he could. That's what I'm saying. You're not too old to pick up a craft. Cease. You were a nurse, right? So it doesn't mean you can't pick up a craft and do something, carpentry, blacksmithing, whatever the case is. I'm really trying as hard as I can to be a sofer stam and writing a Torah scroll. One of a kind, as far as I can tell. Not Wes. You're still very young, son. You can.
He wants to do masonry.
There you go. Masonry is amazing. That's an amazing craft, especially if you can become a master at it. And so what we have today, and I'll even use my kids, one of my kids, as an example for this. My daughter, she's always interested in doing stuff, and she'll jump into it. I love her so much. She's awesome. She's really talented. She doesn't know how talented she is. But if it's not just amazingly easy for her to accomplish at the outset, she'll stop. She won't go back to it. And both of my kids did that to some degree, especially when it came to music. I'm an accomplished musician, school trained, and I worked very hard for many years to be the best musician I could be. And I reached a pretty lofty height, in my personal opinion. Certainly not Yo-Yo Ma or anything, or not a virtuoso, but I was pretty decent musician. But my kids, they just didn't grasp it. And I know it's a product of today that kids don't dedicate themselves to a thing and see it through. Because if it's not really easy and if I don't get some immediate success at it, I don't want to have anything to do with it. And so we need to go about figuring out a way to change that and have our kids pick up a craft and become a master at it. And I don't mean you're going to be a master in 2 or 3 weeks. You might become a master in 20 years. We got to do something 10,000 times before you're a master at it. You know what I mean? So it's not something that's easy, but it's never going to happen if you don't start. So that's what I think of with these guys. So people say they were slaves and they were nothing but brick makers. But Bezalel, he knew master craftsmanship, right? So I would like to encourage you all to encourage your kids and encourage yourselves. Find something and become a master at it. I happen to know Jim is really good with herbs and stuff and edible plants and things like that. I just don't have that knowledge, and I'm really envious of that, actually. I could get it, but I just haven't had the time. And I know you're really good at carpentry and other things, electricity, those kinds of things, fixing houses. And so when you do something, just keep in mind, you put your name on it. So just do it the best you possibly can every time, even if you don't like doing it. My son, on the other hand, is different. He became a welder, and that's all he thinks about is welding. He gets a tattoo on his arm of welding. He's a man. I mean, he's young. He's welding custom-made aluminum pontoon boats now. That's his job, and he just loves it. It's all he thinks about. Getting a welding truck and making his welds just perfect. You know, he does every single thing he can to make it perfect. And I would encourage you guys to do the same thing. Master craftsmanship, melakah. Baking and boiling is another thing that is melakah, and it's prohibited on Sabbath, right? We're going into talking about things that are prohibited on Sabbath, right? So whatever work could be involved in creating, it's prohibited on Sabbath. That's when you take a break from it. You can do that craft for 6 days, and then you take a break from it. So says the scripture. Same thing with baking and boiling or the cooking of food. Those things are to be done before the Sabbath. And you can read about that in Shemot 16:23, right? It is considered prohibited melakah. Kindling of a fire is prohibited melakah, according to 35:3, Shemot 35:3. We're going to talk about this one in detail in just a few minutes. You got a question?
Yeah, specifically about this.
We're going to talk about it in depth in a few minutes. Carrying a burden or load is prohibited melakah. Not supposed to carry stuff. Remember the guy picking up the firewood. Now, in some cases, I think this once again goes overboard. In some Jewish communities, they won't even carry their Bibles to synagogue because that's carrying a load. Now, maybe it is, maybe it isn't, but carrying your Bible to synagogue is not the same thing as doing melakah to create the tabernacle, right, or the Mishkan. You'll have to decide that for yourself, though. I'm not going to tell you what's right and what's wrong. Buying and selling is melakah that is prohibited on Sabbath. Got a couple of witnesses for that. Me personally, my family, I'm not telling you what you have to do with yours. We don't talk about money on the Sabbath. We don't touch it on the Sabbath. Sometimes inadvertently we touch it because somebody comes and, here, I want to give you this donation. I'm like, oh, thanks. But we don't sit there and talk about it, you know. But so buying and selling is prohibited melakah on Shabbat. Causing others to work. And so causing others to work. So that means, I'll just give you a quick example. It's the Sabbath, and you didn't quite get enough tortillas for your fajitas on Friday, so you go to the store and you just pick up a pack of tortillas for your fajitas, right? Well, the people that work at the store, they're going to be working there anyway. But now, because you went there, you've caused them to work. Or making someone else, if you're a business owner and you say, yeah, sorry, man, you got to work on Saturday. We got to get this thing done. You're guilty of making them perform melakah on the Sabbath. Yes.
So this brings up the question of why do Orthodox Jews have someone else come into their house to turn on lights for them during the Sabbath?
So the question was, this brings up, this is for the guys at home that can't hear you. The question was, why do some Orthodox Jews have someone come into their house on Sabbath to do all those things for them so that they can't do it? And especially in New York, they call that person a Shabbos goy. So I'm here to tell you that that's wrong also. They shouldn't be doing it. Now, most of the time, it's a really good relationship. I know a person who used to be a Shabbos goy in New York City for a family of Jews, and he did it with a willing heart. He loved those people. They took really good care of him, paid him really well, and did really nice things for him, invited his family over. They were really good to him. But the bottom line is, it breaks the prohibition here of causing someone else to work on Sabbath.
You're going to be paying him for his service.
Yeah. Paying him for his services, and you can't do it, right? You can't, and plus they have to. The bottom line is they're supposed to rest. It's wrong, no matter how you look at it. It's so funny sometimes. In fact, yesterday we prepared breakfast. Like we made some boiled eggs and had them sitting around. We had some muffins that we had, and I was sitting at the table, and my wife was up and said, "Sweetie, can you hand me one of those muffins?" She goes, "I am not your Shabbos goy." Joking, of course, but it's wrong. They shouldn't be doing it, honestly. And they take a lot of things too far, and we're going to talk just a little bit about that also. You can't have your children doing stuff. Yeah, I told you weren't going to go play soccer unless all that dog poop was picked up out of the backyard. So you want to go, you better get out there and get it done. It's not happening. You're not supposed to do that, especially on the Sabbath, right? Any servant or employee who would serve you, like I was just saying a little while ago, it's hard sometimes, especially in the trades. If you happen to be a Sabbath keeper, or you try to be a Sabbath keeper and you own a construction company and you're under a deadline, you can't make them work on Sunday, but you can sure make them work on Saturday because that's the way of the world right now. You just have to have some faith that Adonai is going to keep your project on time. You can't make them work on Saturday. And a lot of times they will volunteer. No, I'm ready. I want the overtime. Let me work on Saturday. I'm sorry, I can't let you do that. And likewise, there's been several times out of my house. So my next door, the neighbor, the guy that I bought my small little of land from, he's actually a Jew, but he's a Baptist Jew. And let me tell you something, he's really blessed. He's a skilled master craftsman at what he does. And this guy works all the time. I guarantee you he works 20 hours of every day, sleeps for 2 hours, and I don't know what he does for the other 2, who knows, but he is always working very hard. He's very successful. And he's so nice, man. If he's out and he's spraying, exterminating for insects or something at his son's house who lives next door, he'll just pop over and do it up at my house too. And occasionally I've had to say, "Hey, Lee, man, I love you, man. I really appreciate it, but could you not do this today?" And you know what? He'll say, "Yeah, no problem." And he'll be back tomorrow. Even though he wasn't doing that task, he'll be back tomorrow. He's just that good of a guy. But I've had to say sometimes, Sabbath, man, could maybe not do it today. And it's okay. I really appreciate it. Love you, man. I just don't want you to do it out here. And, you got to do that. This also includes any stranger that would serve you. And this is where we get into going to the store on the Sabbath. I somewhat regret this just a little bit because it was a little bit judgmental on my part. Maybe it was a lot judgmental, but one of our brothers, we love him. He's been a part of our family for years and years and years. He doesn't seem to be anymore, even though in our hearts he still is. Every Sabbath he would come, and he was famous for bringing fried chicken to Sabbath. And really miss, right? Man, I miss that guy. But he would stop on his way to Torah study at whatever grocery store and buy the fried chicken on Saturday. So I really regret getting on to him about it, but and I think his feelings were hurt over it. And we tried to teach it, and then we tried being a little bit more forceful about it. And honestly, that was dumb on my part. And I'm not saying dumb on anybody else's part, but I'll take responsibility that we made it a big deal out of it. So what I would like to say about this right here, Doesn't mean you have to be judgmental about someone else who does, because honestly, there have been times where I found myself in a pickle. Maybe about 6 or 7 weeks ago, I was on my way here to Torah study, and I realized, oh my goodness, I did not get gas yesterday, and I had just enough to roll up next to the pump because my engine was dead, and I had to get gas, or I wasn't even going home. So I chose to pay for gas and then come on to Torah study. So I would say, don't be judgmental if somebody else does it, but it may be something for you to strive for. Try to take care of everything you can on Shabbat prep day, which is Friday, and so that you don't have to do anything on Sabbath, right? Because now I've just made somebody else work, and I've broken that mitzvah, right? Or any animal you own. As this goes back to farm animals. So another quick thing, the community that I told you about down Elmont, Texas, Homestead Heritage, they grow all their own food, and they plow all their fields behind horses and mules. It's amazing. They say, if you ever talk to them, they say, we can hear music as the plow is cutting through the earth. They just love it. They don't raise any pigs, and not because of their religious beliefs. They just don't believe that it is. Let's make it service. Hold on one second. This is yes, sir. So that was Wes checking up on his kiddos. Earl checking up on his kiddos. So they grow all their own food. They don't raise pigs, not for religious. They just think they're nasty, and they don't grow it. They make their own cheese. They milk their own cows. They have their own gardens. They have community gardens where they hay their own fields to feed their livestock. They teach their kids to be farriers and good animal husbands. And so, if you go into the restaurant there on their homestead farm, you could go in and you sit down. Number one, they built the building by hand, and then you sit down at a table that they made by hand, and you eat on dishes that they made in their pottery barn, and you use utensils that they made in the blacksmith shop, and you eat a food that they grew on their farm. So, for example, I had the Reuben sandwich the first time I went there. The bread was made from the wheat grown on their farm. The sauerkraut was made from the cabbage grown on their farm. The corn, or the meat, was grown from their herd right there, and the mustard or whatever the stuff was made from the stuff they grew on their own farm. It's all done right there. And they even said, you got to think about this. Those are master craftsmen also. And they explained it, say, we take as much pride in our recipes as the potters do over in the pottery barn, or the fibrous arts people do spinning the yarn and weaving cloth. So it's something very special to my heart that they say, it doesn't matter what I'm doing, I'm going to do the very best I can possibly do. So any animals you own, this would be, especially back then, you had to have oxen or whatever to plow the fields. You got to let them rest on that day. Or any visitor in your home. Can't imagine asking any visitors in my home to do anything, but it's there, right? Number 7, doing your own pleasure or doing your own ways or speaking your own words is considered melcha, right? That's according to Yeshayahu 58:13-14, and we just read that a couple minutes ago. So before we move on, does anybody have any questions about stuff you can't do on Shabbat? What is considered melcha? Yeah.
So would be speaking your own words be like promoting your business, or
Yes.
or talking yourself up for other people?
Talking about your job and that kind of thing. Yes, sir. I in my personal opinion, it is. I'm not going to judge anyone else for doing it. Sometimes folks will come in and say, "So how's work going?" It's going good. You working on anything special? I'll even indulge. Yep, working on selling Patriot missiles to Poland. Whatever the case is, I'm an international arms dealer, man. Whatever the case is, but yeah, that's exactly it. So, but I'm not going to offer it up. I'm not going to judge anybody else for doing it, especially when folks just don't know. Speaking your own words, speaking idly. That doesn't mean that every conversation you have has to be about the scriptures. It has to be about Yeshua, because you have family scriptures. Family time, and you get to joke around and say things. I'm just saying, speaking your own words is like, just like you said, Ben, promoting your own business or talking about building yourself up or something like that. That doesn't mean you can't build somebody else up. Very soon, we're going to have some folks come in here. You may or may not know him. His name is Noe. He and his whole family take care of the maintenance and the upkeep on this building. And they've done so many great things for us that we're going to make them honorary shamshot in Beit and give them certificates and just try to honor them. So there's nothing wrong with building other people up, but that's speaking your own words, doing your own pleasure. Don't read into that too much. Some folks have gone so far as to say doing your own things. You know, I know somebody who put a fence around it so much they say, well, you can't have relations with your wife on Shabbat. I've never heard of anything more ridiculous. But just be careful about the fence. Now, if it's a personal thing, I don't do this because it might make me do that. That's on you. But you can't try to make other people do it. You know, it's not law. It's not scriptural. So let's talk about when melacha can be done on Sabbath. In matters of chesed, Shabbat is loosed, right? So let's take a look at Hosea 6:6. Anybody know what there's Nehemiah. So where I can find the book of Hosea. What page is Hosea on?
67, 68.
Row. Oh, I missed it. Somebody pull that up and read it. Hosea 6:6. I can't be the only one with the Bible here.
Already shut zip mode, I can't read it.
It doesn't open back up.
Because I desire steadfast love and not sacrifice, and knowledge of Elohim rather than burnt offerings.
Good. All right. So we're going to go into more detail on that specific thing in just a minute. Sacrifice is of greater weight than Sabbath. We get that from Vayikra 23, 37, 38, and Matthew 12:5. So the sacrifices still continued even on Sabbath, right? So sacrifices were of greater weight than Sabbath. Making clay in the process of healing, and healing itself are acts of chesed and permitted on Sabbath. We can read about that in John chapter 9 for sure. Yeah.
I think that has a broader interpretation than just like miraculous healing. That also means continuing medical care or something.
Yeah, absolutely.
On Sabbath.
Absolutely.
The broader scope.
Yes, sir. Uh-huh. You got that exactly right, Wes.
There's no commandment against doing good.
Yeah, exactly right. There was no against
You're
doing it.
saving somebody's life or health or property, whatever, you can do that.
Absolutely. Good deeds are permitted on Sabbath. We have a couple of witnesses there in Matthew, Luke, and Mark. Even reaping from a field is permitted if it's required in doing good deeds on Sabbath, according to Matthew 12. Right? Care for the well-being of animals is permitted. 13:15, you got a sick horse, you got to deal with a sick horse right away because sick horses get bad fast. I've lost a couple.
Even you know that if your ox, which one of you having an ox fall in the ditch on the Shabbat will not immediately pull it out?
Yeah, there it is right there. Animals that fall into pits or other life-threatening situations can be helped out in their distress, for sure. Interestingly, though, the community at Qumran, mostly known as the Essenes, would differ completely on that view. They are teachings that you can find that say, nope, if that ox is in the ditch, you leave it there to die.
Well, we have people that
Exactly right. You shouldn't have had him out there in the first place.
we have people that believe you should do blood transfusions and things like that. If you're going to die, then
You're going to
they're
die.
going to let you die of stuff like that.
Sure. What you got, Ben?
If an animal's in distress, it's not resting, is it?
No. Right. But if you go help it, you're not resting. Anyway, I'm just saying,
But it's a good deed to get it out.
yeah, that's what we're saying here. Yeah, exactly. That's the way we believe here. If you have an animal in distress, and you can take care of them on the Sabbath, make sure if they just, something happened and mice came and ate up all the chicken feed, you better give your chicken some food. You know what I mean? Make sure they've got water, especially when it's 2,000 degrees in Oklahoma summer, right?
And shade even.
In the shade, yeah, give them some
No,
shade.
but to give them
Give them
shade.
some shade, exactly. Circumcision outweighs the Sabbath. We can circumcise our sons when the Sabbath is the 8th day of their birth, right? Healing is not commanded, but it seems to have equal or greater weight than good deeds.
You didn't say, but women are also allowed to deliver babies, so they're allowed to labor on Shabbat to give birth.
Yeah, but they shouldn't. If they, I'm just kidding. They should try to control that just a little bit.
Stop it.
Right. So healing is not commanded, but it is definitely of equal or greater weight than good deeds. And so that's how we say one of the things in hermeneutics is if this, then that, right? So if saving an animal's life is permitted on Sabbath, how much more the human life, right? So definitely doctors, EMTs, police officers, firefighters, soldiers, sailors, airmen, Marines, absolutely. Knowledge of Elohim, da'at of Elohim is of greater weight than burnt offerings, according to Hosea 6:6. The temple service, which burnt offerings is a part of, greater weight than Sabbath. Therefore, knowledge of Elohim is of greater weight than Sabbath. There's another hermeneutical argument right here, right? So that's where studying, even if you happen to be a rabbi or you happen to be a pastor, that's your job. Studying on Shabbat is permitted, right? Knowledge of Elohim is of greater weight. So, any questions about melachah that we can do? We talked about melachah that we're not supposed to do. Now melachah that we can do. Anybody else got any examples of stuff that we can do?
Well, I was just going to say, so there's actually a commandment that says to study to show yourself a workman who is approved by Elohim.
Yep, very good. And in my mind, it's one of the ways we can worship Him the best, and that's studying the words that He gave us to study, and become a student of what He said. So that's a good form of worship too. So, all right, so let's move on. Let's talk about this Kindle of Fire. Lo tiva alush bechol moshvotechem beyom hashabbat. You shall not kindle a flame on the Sabbath. So that's a verb. Lo teva alu is you do not kindle a flame. And it's to begin to burn or to be kindled, start burning, to burn, to be burning, to consume. It also is Adonai's wrath or human wrath figuratively. That is to burn, and they all mean the same thing. Or that lo teva alu can mean any one of those four things. Let's talk about that just a little bit. Let's discuss this. So, kindling a flame on the Sabbath. Go ahead.
Doesn't it specifically say do not kindle a flame in your house?
Ah, very good. No, it does not. Let's go back. Lo teva alu esh bechol mosh votechem. See that mosh votechem? That is moshav. What is a moshav?
So the community.
In your community, right? Moshav. It's almost like a kibbutz, but it's a moshav. It's a farm in your community, your co-op of people there.
Or like your town, your village, your area.
Kind of. So I wouldn't consider Lawton, Oklahoma to be a moshav, but it's possible that we could have a moshav out east of town and call it Beit Wesley Sobrowski Moshav. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And it'd be a co-op of bricklayers. So we wouldn't want to kindle a fire in the moshav. So keeping on with this thought, we discussed that in the moshav. Why would we kindle a fire in the moshav?
To do work.
To do work, yeah, right? What kind of work specifically?
Baking and boiling.
Baking and boiling is a good one, yeah.
Smelting metals.
Smelting metal is a good
Making
one.
bricks, making
Yeah,
pottery.
that's right.
Fire and poverty.
Go ahead.
But also kindling a fire would be to just keep warm, which means survival.
Oh, very good. Awesome. So, and we're going to talk about this just a little bit, but and I put at the end of our slides here JD's 10 Commandments of kindling a fire. We'll get to them in a couple minutes, but You shall not kindle a fire. Does that mean it's the middle of winter? We had a bad polar ice vortex come through Lawton several weeks ago. Let's just change it up. We are now living in Walnut Grove, Minnesota. It is early 1800s, and we live about 5 miles away from a not so distant relative of Wayne Ingalls, Papa Charles Ingalls. Truly, they are related. That's the truth. And we depend. Little house on the prairie, baby. Yeah, exactly. So we live pretty close to that guy. Our only source of heat is fireplace. Do we not start a fire? Do we just sit there and freeze?
That would be life-threatening.
Yeah, it would be.
So how did Jews of certain sects not freeze to death in the winter? Sects that you could not light a fire.
It's a good question. So I'm just going to read this.
They
Especially,
obviously survived.
yep. So the debate and meaning and the application of this word divides traditional Judaism and Karaite Judaism, and the animosity of the interpretation continues to this day. So the Archkol Chumash says, the oral law makes clear that the only creation of fire and such use of it as cooking and baking are forbidden. But there is no prohibition against enjoying its light and heat. Deviant sects that denied the teachings of the sages misinterpreted the passages. Say again? Deviants, right? Misinterpreted the passage to refer to all use of fire, so they would sit in the dark throughout the Sabbath, just as they sat in spiritual darkness all their lives.
Seems to be a grudge there.
Does seem like a grudge, yeah. There's a Karaite blogger that says in the early days of Karaism, the Rabbinites taunted us and accused us of being sitters in the dark, a reflection of some Anan's early law, which he would not permit a fire to be lit before the Sabbath, so that there would be light in the home during the Sabbath evening, perhaps a little too zealous in his interpretation, and preserved for a long time that those were part of an Ammonite sect, and at least common sense prevailed by the time of Karkasani. The acceptance of candles lit before Sabbath was reinstated. So I'm going to go out on a limb here and say they didn't freeze to death because they lit their fires.
Some did.
Some didn't. You're right. I personally have a problem with it. That you are supposed to sit in darkness and freeze to death in the middle of winter as a Sabbath keeper.
To death is, I'm back and forth with you here.
Yeah, I got you.
To death is not what happened.
I understand. Maybe it did in some cases.
In some cases, maybe. Some cases, the fire killed people too.
Yeah, that's true. Very good. Another Karaite view is they traditionally interpret the verse forbidding the burning of fire on the Sabbath as meaning that no fire whatsoever may remain lit once the Sabbath comes in until the Sabbath goes out. From this traditional Karaite interpretation comes the rabbinical tradition to make hamim cholent, which is a stew that is placed on the fire before the Sabbath and left to cook throughout the Sabbath. Said the rabbis, if one refuses to make hamim on the Sabbath, one is being a we should all be so lucky. Is the Karaite understanding correct, or is the rabbinical way of seeing it to completely refrain from the use of fire on Sabbath, but to permit the use of electricity? This is the approach that this website recommends. That's the Karaite corner there. So now we're in modern days. We have another argument. Well, you're not only you can't light a fire, but you can use your electricity. And some others say, no, you can't do that either. You can't use your electricity. Hence the Shabbos goy. You can't turn on, and some people will go on to say, hey, flipping a switch, there's a little tiny spark whenever you do that, that's kindling a flame. But it's also doing work on the Sabbath.
And also still today, most electricity is generated by coal fire.
Yeah.
Which is already burning.
Already burning, baby. Exactly. So this is something that you're going to have to decide for yourselves. I'm not going to tell you, but I personally, I'll give you exactly what I think. My 10 words of fire, this is my personal and family halakha. This is how we do it. Number one, it's very hard to consider the Sabbath a delight if you're sitting in the dark.
And cold.
It's very hard to consider the Sabbath a delight if you're freezing cold. Personally, I'm saying you just can't delight in it if you're miserable, right? It's just a personal thing. I'm not telling you you have to light a fire on Sabbath. I'm just saying for us, lighting a fire for warmth is permittable in my house. Lighting a fire for light when it is dark would be permittable. We don't need it because we have electricity. If the electricity goes out and it's dark, we might have to light a candle to see. Lighting a fire for the purpose of cooking is not permittable. Lighting a fire to accomplish melacha is not permittable. And it's any kind of melacha. Let's just say it's time to light my burn pile, my brush pile. If I don't get it done today, the governor puts a burn ban in Oklahoma tomorrow. I got this burn pile for the rest of the summer. It's not permitted. You got the burn pile the rest of the summer. That's how it goes. This is just for me. I'm not telling you anybody else that you have to do it this way. Keeping a fire going to keep warm in the winter is permitted. Let's say you start the fire before the Sabbath, you can keep it going. Keeping a fire going to continue to see is also permitted. Using a fire to keep food already prepared before Shabbat is permitted. Crockpot, yeah, turning on a light switch is not kindling a fire or melacha. Now, this is just at my house. Definitely not telling you what you got to do at yours. Do what you got to do. If you are absolutely no fire for any reason, God bless you. I still love you, just like my brother and my sister.
Then we'll bury your frozen corpse next.
Nah, you're not going to freeze. You would. And I would say, and if you have to light a fire to stay warm, if it just got so bad that you had to, God is going to forgive you. Truly, we have atonement for our sins. So, you do what you got to do.
You need to work it out yourself, because
That's not
you're
right.
not gonna be able to stand before God and say, JD said it was okay.
That's exactly right. You are not going to be able to stand before God and say, JD said I could. It's not going to happen, Chief. You got to do it for yourself. I'm just telling you, this is my personal view on it, and this is what I'm going to hold to. I purposely, another thing, if folks know me, you know that I'm into bushcraft. I love doing it. I love getting out and doing it. I've got some great bushcraft tools. I can light a fire with a bow drill. I can light a fire with a ferro rod, and I can light a fire with a Bic lighter. But if I'm out doing bushcraft, I'm not doing the cooking and things like that when I'm doing it. I try to, because it's just a hobby and I'm not doing it to survive, I typically will not mess with it when it's on the Sabbath. So that's just me. I believe in my heart that would be prohibited melacha. So, any questions? Anybody got anything they want to add? I was going to go into the tabernacle, but we already did the tabernacle several weeks back in another Torah portion, right? So if you guys don't have anything, we'll pray really fast and we'll go. Yeah, go ahead.
I wanted to ask about, in 1 Kings, it said the month of the Ethnaim. Who were the Ethnaim? Or what were the Ethnaim?
I have to look that up, man. I don't know. I will look it up, though, now that you mention it. Somebody else might know.
What book?
In the Haftorah, the Ethnaim,
What book was it?
1 Kings.
First Kings?
Yeah, I got to look it up, too. I appreciate it. I will look it up, though. Okay. Let's pray. Abba, Father, we are truly thankful to come together and study your Torah. We praise you for it. We thank you for it. It is a gift, and it does strengthen us. Pray, Father, that you go with us this week. Keep us all strong and dedicated to you. Let us do everything we do the best we possibly can for you. We praise you. We thank you. In the name of Yeshua the Messiah. Amen. All right. We can get ready for some Havdalah. Havdalah. Sabbath is over, so let's kindle a flame.
So we can have a dollar.
Let's light it up.